part of IBM Europe. In this technical hands-on movie, we're going to look at how to back up and clone workload partitions. Let's log into our workload partition 23. Just so that we know where we are. I like to create a little file in /home, put date output into. We'll use that to make sure that we got back to our original image. Okay, we'll log out of that now, and we're global copy of AIX lswpar. We can see the partition 23, and the other two, so we can ignore that. Now let's use the save NFS files, otherwise they're not backed up. I guess the NFS on a global copy of AIX. Minus I was going to use an image data you could use all the way back in things. A minus F to the file. I've got a file system called backup. We'll name the file something sensible. And then tell it which partition we actually want to back up. So there we go. And it's finished. Now that was quick, wasn't it? If we change to backup, we can find the file in here, and we'll find that this is a copy of AIX, well, a miniature copy of AIX, a workload /user and /opt, which is the file. The 40 megabytes, we can back this up very regularly and simply transport that perhaps tape backup or something like that. Next thing I want to do is this workload partition, and with these options to make it as quick as possible. And, probably best if I define. I'm going to go to the NFS server here. See, these are all the mount points for all my workload partitions from 1 to WP32. In over here we have 23 home, root, temp, and var. I've already typed in here the command that, if I get this right, will okay. Nothing in these. Now it's important not to delete directories because they're NFS mount points, and that upsets NFS. Okay. And we try and start our workload partition. Like that terribly. Can't find any files to mount, so it's going to stop. The definition of the workload partition is actually backup. So first thing we have to do is actually delete the workload partition completely. Okay, so we're just relying on a backup, and we example ls save wpart and minus f that's in this directory wp23. My fault, I need a minus f in there, and we can set file backup, and so we could extract one individual file if in case we haven't got anything or we've had a disaster. To do a restore wpar minus backup wp23.bk. So that's creating the file systems and pulling in all the data. This will take. Okay, we got it back and we can start wpar wp23. And we can to it. If you refused, maybe being a bit too quick. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Log in. Home. And we've even got that last file that we created. If we log out of there and come back to the global copy of it, we go to /temp, there's a directory called wpar, and then there's a directory for each of the backups we've done. We've only done one here, so we go to that particular directory. We backup. For example, if we go to the wpar or the workload partition, we back the details there. This was actually used to regenerate the workload partition as we did the restart. The mount points in here at the bottom. There's some security information. File systems, for example, and we can change those as we come. It was running under in case we have problems when we want to restart it because we're under a different version. Now let's think about cloning. We've already backed up a partition and then restore into a different workload partition. Well, let's have a little look at that. If we change to here, I've got a little command of 23, but install it back into workload partition 24. So we have a little command here. So we've got restore, but we've got an extra bunch of commands in here. So we're going to say restore this file, w23 backup file. We want to change this. We want the node name to be this. We want the mount point directory to be different, and we want the network settings to be different. So it's got a different IP address here, and so in this case we're doing a but we're changing a bunch of parameters. Now one thing to do note is that we have a -m or double quotes here, and there's another one here. So all is other -n options inside it. It took me a couple of times to get absolutely correct. We run that command. We'll see it looks much the same as the restore that we did for 23, but now it's going into a workload partition called 24. Okay, there we go. And we can start it up. Okay, you'll see login to get to it. We can see it's of our original workload partition 23. Well, there we have it. Backup, restore, and clone. If you have data in your workload partition, then of course your backup and recovery of AIX, then of course you again will benefit from the small and compact nature of the